Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 7 Secrets of Inspiring Presentation. I'm Athol Duncan. I work with The Edge Consultancy, and we're people who are very passionate about helping people with public speaking and with presentations. My background is really a career in 3 different acts. First, I started working at the BBC, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in news and current affairs with reporters and presenters. Second act was going out as a communications director, corporate affairs director, and I was asked by a lot of senior people to help them with their presentations. And third act, where I am now, is doing a few non-executive roles, but also focusing in the Edge with helping senior leaders and with up-and-coming people to be better and more effective presenters. And we created what's called the 7 Secrets of Inspiring Presentation. One of the reasons that we did that was back in my day at the BBC, we used to just take young people, put them onto the radio or onto the television, and they were either good at it or they weren't. So it was sink or swim. And this seemed a bit of a waste of talent. So I started teaching people how to do it. And in a different role that I have, I chair an organization called UK Coaching, which works with sports coaches, from the Olympic coaches down to the people that help the children every Saturday with their soccer or with their hockey. The sports coaches will tell you, focus on the process, not the end result. And that's what we do by breaking down the great things in presentation into this 7-step process. And I have with me my colleague, Zara.
Hello.
So Zara, rather than talking about it, Zara is someone who actually does it in many guises. I'm going to play you a tiny little bit of Zara in action, and then we'll hear what Zara's been up to. So Zara, there you are in
Thank you
full
very much
action, in full swing.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit to the people on the call what it is that you do, because you go from these great international keynotes to broadcasting, stand-up comedy, the lot.
Well, the whole gamut. I'm just greedy. I haven't figured out what I want to be yet when I grow up, Athol. So I'm still trying everything, which is lovely. But my career started out as a journalist. I began in a newsroom writing and very quickly moved into broadcast. And I think, with that you always have the opportunity to do lots of other things, and you have the opportunity to event host. And then over the years, I was working with entertainment programs. So I moved very quickly into doing things like stand-up comedy and commentating in sports events. And it just opened up a whole world for me. Now I'm a screenwriter. I also picked up some acting roles. I was in ITV's Karen Perry last year. And so a working week for me is very, very varied. So this week, for example, I've been working on BBC Radio. I have a radio show every Sunday and do lots of commentating and bits on other radio programs on Radio 5 Live. I write shows for Radio 4 and work on Radio 4 and of course BBC Radio Scotland. And I mentioned I'm a screenwriter, so lots of my week is screenwriting. There's a show that we start filming in September, so I'm just finishing off my episode of that now. And I do all sorts of things. You saw in the little snippet there on stage with Karen Brady. I work with her at her women in business events, and I was at one last week where I was speaking to Jenny Campbell in Manchester and a number of other keynote speakers, and hosting a joke telling competition. That was a good one at the Scottish Parliament. That was for primary school pupils, and it was about the importance of communication, which of course is why we're here today.
It is, and it's how we bring some of those skills from broadcasting and from stand-up comedy and from the movies into corporate life, because there's a couple of serious points about this in the corporate world. I'm going to share a couple of slides here. Like to start with this slide. So a little pile of numbers on there, but these are the real serious reasons why we need to help people more with their presentations. So you can see a pile of compelling numbers up here. 74% of people don't feel confident presenting. 80% of presentations fail their objective, often because there's not clarity, they don't get to the point. How many workplace errors? 70% are due to poor communications. And then when you get into the leadership space, you see that this is from the Institute of Internal Communications, these bottom numbers here, 54% don't really trust what their CEO communicates, scary number. And a large number of people want more communication because they don't get what it is that they're supposed to do in their organizations. They don't particularly understand the strategy, and they just need this, they just seek this clarity. And I think there's another reason in the corporate world, and Zara, I occasionally show this slide near the start of our work, because there's a real anxiety. Some of the people that I coach, and the very, very senior people, they'll spend a couple of sleepless nights before they do a big town hall in front of 200 people. And the reason why I show this is that when you survey what people fear most, people actually fear public speaking more than they feel dying. So the story goes that if you're at a funeral, you probably want to be in the box rather than doing the eulogy. You come across this, so you get anxiety yourself?
Oh my goodness, Athol. I mean, so first of all, glass phobia, it is the #1 fear. And isn't that crazy that people would much rather be the one in the casket than the one delivering the eulogy? I think that's, unbelievable, because the power of public speaking is tremendous, not just as an individual, but to a business. It helps you move other people, to inspire them to action. You can communicate the message of your heart and your mind. I definitely had a lot of glass phobia and fear of public speaking when I first started out. And the very first day that I was supposed to be presenting a news program, I found out, ran to the toilet, I was sick, I called my mum. And I really took, it took time and it took practice. And I sort of wish that I had access to these resources that you're sharing today, just as a guide to help me overcome that, because I was really going into it blind for quite a long time.
Okay, so we're going to look at somebody who is one of the world's best and most inspiring presenters, and that's Michelle Obama on the screen just now. And I would say at this point, if you have any questions or any points that you want to make, drop them in the chat, and Zara and I will keep an eye on the chat. So what I want you to do, and Zara's going to help me here, is watch Michelle Obama and tell me, break it down like one of these analysts. We're just about to have this European football championships where the analysts will dissect what the people do on the pitch. Be a bit of a football analyst or a presentation analyst, Sarah. What is Michelle Obama doing that is really good here, and what works? And all the clips that we're going to show you today are around about 90 seconds long. So this was Michelle Obama's, one of her last speeches as the First Lady, and it's on what she's truly passionate about, which is hope and opportunity for young people.
And as I end my time in the White House, I can think of no better message to send to our young people in my last official remarks as First Lady. So for all the young people in this room and those who are watching, know that this country belongs to you, to all of you, from every background and walk of life. If you or your parents are immigrants, know that you are part of a proud American tradition, the infusion of new cultures, talents, and ideas, generation after generation, that has made us the greatest country on earth. If your family doesn't have much money, I want you to remember that in this country, plenty of folks, including me and my husband, we started out with very little, but with a lot of hard work and a good education, anything is possible, even becoming president. That's what the American dream is all about.
So, what does she do that's great, Zara?
I just love Michelle.
Expert eye.
She's great, isn't she? So there's really good eye contact there. She's looking up. She's very engaged with the audience, but she's also measured. So she's not rushing. She has a really lovely pace. And that helps her deliver her words with authenticity, because that was something that came through really strongly there, wasn't it, Athol? She just feels very authentic, and that's very hard to teach. How do you teach someone to actually speak from the heart so they seem genuine? But she used her hands to illustrate points, almost using her body and her body language to really hit home the messages that she wanted people to really hear. And I think taking your time, she took her time there. She smiled. There was a little bit of humor at the end there as well, which obviously I quite like. If you can make your audience laugh, that makes everyone's job much easier, doesn't it?
So she does a lot when she does the 7 secrets in action. When we reveal what the 7 secrets are, you'll see what that means. Maybe just any questions, pop them in the chat. Any comments that you want to make, tell us what you see about what Michelle Obama does well. I think that she has this great pace. She does this connection thing, and she does what very inspiring speakers do well, which she makes it feel like she's talking directly to you. You know, and that's there's a big knack in that, isn't there? You get some of these great leaders in an audience of thousands of people. You think of someone, maybe some of the great preachers or evangelists or the Martin Luther Kings, and it feels like they're talking directly to you. And yet in the corporate world, quite often we don't make this connection, do we?
No, that's true. And part of that is the speech writers as well. I mean, there's a lot in the content as well, in the form, the words that we use, but actually the delivery is often the most important. So how you're doing it rather than necessarily what you're saying.
So I'm going to show you another video of Michelle Obama. And this is Michelle Obama from about 8 years earlier. And in this one, Zara, when you do your analysis, I want you to let us know what you think she's not doing well. Okay? Because this is her when she's quite inexperienced. She comes to London. She kind of makes the same speech, which is about hope and opportunity, and she's at a school in the East End of London. So tell me what she's not doing well here, because I think you'll see there's quite a difference.
This is my first trip. My first foreign trip as a first lady. Can you believe that? And while this is not my first visit to the UK, I have to say that I am glad that this is my first official visit. The special relationship between the United States and the UK is based not only on the relationship between governments, but the common language and the values that we share. And I'm reminded of that by watching you all today. During my visit, I've been especially honored to meet some of Britain's most extraordinary women, women who are paving the way for all of you. And I'm honored to meet you, the future leaders of Great Britain and this world. And although the circumstances of our lives may seem very distant, with me standing here as the First Lady of the United States of America and you just getting through school, I want you to know that we have very much in common. For nothing in my life's path would have predicted that I'd be standing here as the first African-American First Lady of the United States of America. There was nothing in my story that would land me here. This is
So, quite different, yeah?
Day and night, isn't it? You know, obviously it shows you the benefit of time and experience, but also using the right techniques when you're public speaking. One of the first things I noticed, Ath, was just how nervous she was. You know, you get that sense that she's not confident, not comfortable in her own skin, but the specifics of it were just that, first of all, that mic. holding
Yeah.
that mic is a barrier, and it's definitely something to think about when you're on stage. You know, I really enjoy having headsets. If I ever have the option of using a headset to deliver a keynote, I would take it because it frees me up. I don't
So
know.
we can use our hands, yeah.
I can use my hands, I can point, I can move around freely. It's
So a
definitely
couple
worth looking at that.
of points in the chat which are bang on. No eye contact, limited eye contact. She's reading it, reading a lot.
Yeah.
That's what Prudence and Opagang are saying in there. And one of the things that seems obvious, but we often forget, is that the written word is entirely different from the spoken word. Yeah. So she's reading a speech which someone else has written for her. She doesn't have that nice pace. She definitely doesn't have the pauses. And she has what we call the ums and the ahs. Doesn't she? And that normally comes, Zara, when we're not completely present, because our mind is going forward to think about what we're going to say next, or it's going back to think we shouldn't have said what we just actually said.
And the key is the word present. You know, you're essentially presenting, and that's part of the job. In fact, I would say that's 50% of it sometimes. It's just being very in the moment and reacting to what's happening and how you're feeling. But that reading, I understand people feel it's a safety net, isn't it? It's like a little blanket there that you've got in front of you reading off something, but it completely disengages you. So it's definitely worthwhile working from bullet points and being able to speak from your heart a little bit more in your own words.
And Alison said she doesn't appear as passionate.
Yeah.
Because she's not present, she's reading somebody else's words. It's not coming from her heart. Yeah. There's a blocker in the way there. And as you say, the microphone is a physical blocker. She's hiding behind the microphone. But Michelle Obama, there's also some stuff in the Q&A. What have we got in the Q&A? Okay, maybe the points that we just covered. So Michelle Obama actually focused on the things which are very similar. I can't say that I coached her, but she focused on the 7 secrets. So we're going to reveal to you now, ladies and gentlemen, what the 7 secrets are. So number 1, and we'll take you through these one by one, but just as a summary, number 1 is that communication takes place in the silence. Did you hear all that silence? Not when we're speaking. And you need to get more and more confident before you allow the silence. The reason for the silence is literally to let the penny drop. If the speed of our words and our ideas is faster than the pace in which, as a listener, we can absorb them, we glaze over. And we've all seen often younger presenters who just want to get up there and talk, and they're so petrified they want to sit down, and whoosh, nothing's memorable about what they say. The second one that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail is that we want to make it a conversation, not a presentation. If you can involve people, if you can use the language of chat, if we can make it feel like we're actually having a coffee or a glass of wine with each other and we're hearing your stories, that makes you much more impactful as a presenter. Connect with your audience. We'll give you some practical tips round about that. Get to the point. So important with a lot of people that we work with, because there's a lot of corporate waffle out there. I think waffle is probably the Scottish word. Maybe waffle is the English language word. But it's too much waffle. So how do we cut the waffle and we get this clarity? So working with people in a big bank recently about strategy, and they're like, well, we're not clear. We don't understand what the strategy is. Too much corporate jargon, too much waffle. So get to the point. We'll talk about commanding your space. Commanding your space is what the actors and the actresses do. It's kind of what I'm doing with my hands here. It's why I do my presentations standing up. If we combine communication takes place in the silence with commanding your space suddenly would give you time in your presentations, right? So we see the great sports players, the great footballers like Messi. We always say Messi, he's got all that time on the ball. Yeah. So as a presenter, one thing I want to help you to do is to have more time. And if I combine the silence with the commanding your space, the eye contact, then I give you time. We're going to talk a little bit about building your inner confidence. I have the secret of inner confidence, Sarah, which I keep in a jar in my office. And I'm going to open that a little bit later on and reveal to you what the secret of inner confidence is. And then finally, we're going to talk to you about how you really become memorable. Because whether it's we're talking at town halls, or whether we're talking to clients, or whether we're doing external presentations, or whether we're talking to the board, we want the important things that we say, we want them to stick. And being memorable is really a combination of the 6 things, but it's adding a powerful story, or adding a metaphor, or adding even a prop, which helps your message sink in and be remembered amid all these notifications, emails, and in this society that we now have where nobody stops for a minute to think about stuff. So Zara, we'll go through some of those.
Great.
Which one jumps out for you? I mean, sure, you use them all.
Well, I do use them all. And I mean, there's many over the years that I have leaned into a little bit more. Sometimes you need a refresher yourself as a speaker. You go back to these constantly. At the moment, I'm very focused on how to make conversations because, you know, like today, we're here for 60 minutes and we don't have the benefit of speaking to our audience. So how can we pose questions? What can we do when you're speaking, when you're delivering presentations, so that it doesn't just become a TED talk? And there's some great ways to do that, but sometimes it's even just the language that you have. Are you asking questions? Are you giving them time? Are you listening to the room? We often talk about reading the room. How do you read your audience? How do you read your room? So that's a big one for me right now.
I was doing something with a bank who had a lot of people in India, and on the connect with your audience point, we spent the first 2 or 3 minutes talking about the cricket, because India played Pakistan in the cricket on Sunday and beat them.
Contentious match, that one.
Very contentious match, right? So everyone loved that. You have to watch a bit with sport because sport can turn people off, especially if it's the boys. I know that lots of women like football as well, but if it appears like it's boys talking about football, that can be as excluding as it is connecting.
For sure.
Okay, so number 1, and we kind of mentioned this a bit, silence is an exclamation mark. Think of it as an exclamation mark. And as we just said a moment ago, it lets those thoughts sink in. So when we're working with people, so we quite often do master classes like this, where we teach people the methodology, and then we'll take these little cameras, like this one here, and we'll record people in action, and we'll play it back to them, a little bit like you're doing some analysis of an athlete. And when people see themselves back, I'm really working with them to do this bit about landing their big idea. So using silence and eye contact to land your big idea. And when people see themselves back, Zara, they start to get more confidence about the pauses and about the silence and about the pace, and not being too monotone, but being nicely fluctuating.
Well, because it doesn't feel natural at first, does it? And certainly coming from a background in broadcasting, silence is scary, because when there's silence, it means that usually something has gone wrong. And that's what I told myself after coming from a news background. You know, when you see the reporters standing there and they've obviously not heard that they've been cut to, and they're waiting, the producers in the gallery are saying, go, 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 you're on. And there's maybe 5 or 6 seconds. That's what silence was to me. But over the years, I think it takes confidence to understand that we could all do with slowing down just a little bit more. And even if you start to focus on slowing down, you'll see the benefits.
And Leanne mentions in the chat there about filler words.
Mhm.
You can use filler words to get your confidence up about silence. So quite often I would work with people who might like to say, is that right? You get that? I say right quite a lot.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful that you're not becoming a bit cliched, but you can use those words in them. And we'll come to other things like repetition in a minute. So that's silence and pauses. We'd like you to work on that. And here's the conversation bit. So how do we actually stop transmitting to the people in our organizations? How do we stop just being on transmit? And how do we make it a conversation? So I was working with a chief exec of a large organization, a global organization, and he had to go to a conference in the States with all the global leaders, and he was asked to present on what was happening in the UK business and how things were going in the UK business. And they were going quite well in this company. And he had a very dull presentation. And when I was talking to him about it, he said, well, actually, all we've really done in the UK is we've taken best practice from 6 or 7 countries around the world, right? The Italians have done this really well. They've done this really well in Asia, and the Americans have picked up on that. So we said, well, are these people going to be in the audience? Yeah, they're going to be in the audience. So, well, why don't you do that at the start and involve them and say the success of what we've done in the UK is really about building on the success of everyone in the room, nice and inclusive, nice and connecting. And then he picked out the different people, naming them. So I'm gonna make this up, try and not be stereotyped, but Luigi from Rome, we took, your great practice with this. And the guy came back from me, he said it was brilliant because it relaxed him, because people did things and reacted and clapped and smiled and all this sort of thing, started to feel part of it. Because when we do these presentations, quite often there is an invisible barrier between us and our audience. And what we're trying to do is knock that down. And then this last one, Zara, I'm interested in this, never try to memorize. So have your note. Tell me about not trying to memorize.
I mean, it's the biggest one for me, and something I learned as a young reporter. You'll often see reporters standing out in front of, a high court, and they're delivering a live broadcast. They don't have an auto cue. Very rarely would any presenters that are not in a studio have an auto cue. And so you have to learn what you're trying to deliver. What do you want to say? And be able to say it as naturally as possible. And for that time, when you're watching a reporter, they're delivering lots of key facts and information. Sometimes they're giving their insights. Sometimes they're telling you what happened. But that was my first experience learning not to memorize, was actually learning to tell a bit more of a story with it, to enjoy. And actually, I enjoy it so much more when I'm not trying to memorize and beating myself up or thinking, what am I going to next? It helps you stay very present in the moment.
So we have to have structure, and often we have to have a note to make sure we cover the points that we want to cover. We'll come a little bit more to structure in a second. Right. Other quick top tips. We love speaking in threes. So much of what happens in life is threes. So in the UK, in COVID, it was hands, face, space. When I go on the train to London, I have to see it, say it, and sort it. What other ones are? What are the big threes that?
Oh, I always remember growing up, stop, look, listen. And even acronyms, BBC, we see those everywhere. Acronyms have always got 3 letters, usually.
We came, we saw, we conquered. Veni, vidi, vici.
Yes. Education.
Education. Yeah, the French motto, I might get this in the wrong order, equality, liberty, and fraternity.
We'll go with that.
We'll go with it. Yeah. So threes are beautiful in speech making. They're beautiful because they help you. So 3 is the smallest number that our brain will recognize as a pattern. And a 3 helps you, but a 3 also helps the listener because it gives the listener structure to what you're saying. And if you go to the Bible, there were 3 wise men. There was gold, frankincense, and myrrh. If you go to the movies, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's sex, lies, and videotapes. There's planes, trains, and automobiles. We love 3s. Okay. Next one in is that we work with people on a lot is using repetition for emphasis. It's just using repetition for emphasis. And then the third one, which I always work on people, is we try and say too much. We try and be too convoluted. And we've talked a little bit, Zara, about a technique in stand-up comedy, because you do the stand-up comedy as well, where you try and remove all the words that you don't need to get to the punchline.
Well, that's exactly it. I think sometimes we could all do with thinking, what is the point that we're trying to make? And can I say it in a tweet? You know, can I say it in a sentence? Because usually it helps you be a lot more concise or simplify what it is you're really trying to say.
Okay, so we're going to look at this gentleman on the left-hand side here, Steve Jobs, and we're going to watch him in action, doing quite a bit of this. And this is Steve Jobs launching the iPhone. When do you think the iPhone was launched, Sarah?
Oh, 2014? Was it before that? Was it 15 years ago?
Yeah, I was going to say it was 1999. It's actually 2007.
2007. I was 7 years late.
You're 7 years late. So 2007 launches the iPhone. Quite an interesting question is, if we were asked to launch something as momentous as this, a lot of people would be telling us to give a heck of a lot of detail about it, tell people about the operating system, explain to people about this, that, and the other.
Oh, yeah.
Watch how Steve Jobs uses 3s, uses pauses, and takes out every word that he doesn't need to get his message across, and then watch for his nice punchline at the end.
Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. So, 3 things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. Today.
So there we are. Look at him in all his glory, eh?
Yeah, that was, I mean, he's just great, isn't he? I love watching Steve Jobs on stage and what he did in terms of commanding a space. But everything you just mentioned, you know, those 3 points, you saw that repetition, you saw the 3 things, you know, going over and over and simplified. It was so simple. But Athel, imagine there was a camera as well. That would have been 4. It would have totally messed up this whole thing.
And it's what we take our pictures on now. We hardly make phone calls on it, don't we? But you see him using the 3s there. You see the pauses. You see him teasing. Okay, it's an excited Silicon Valley audience. I suspect in the banks, maybe they're not going to be cheering like that at your Monday morning meeting, but just look at the way that he does it, and how could we incorporate some of that into our town halls or into our external presentations. Right. I'm going to take you to the next thing, which I love and I work with a lot of people for, and that is metaphor. Okay? So metaphor, literally trying to make complexity simple by painting a picture, right? And we love metaphor. So if I were to hold up a red rose to you, Zara, what would the red rose signify to you?
Well, it's love, of course, isn't it?
Yeah. So how can we find these metaphors in our corporate life? And I was asked recently, I was working with a pharma company, and their whole thing was that they need to think smarter about their processes, right? And they asked me to come up with a metaphor that I could use for them, which was about thinking smarter, not just piling into things and doing things in the most obvious way. And I found a little short video that I'm going to show, which is about the hula hoop game, right? And in the hula hoop game, it did happen to be men v women, Sarah, but essentially what we need to do here is you hold arms and you've got to get through the hula hoop in as short a time as possible. And the men went first. Can you see that okay?
Got it. Yeah.
Okay, let me play the hula hoop game. And then question for everyone out there, and pop this in the chat or in the Q&A. What is this a metaphor for?
1, 2, 3.
So 32 seconds. How could that be bettered?
Oh, look at them go.
There we are, 17 seconds.
That
So
was
look,
tremendous.
it was a bit of fun. What's that a metaphor for?
Well, I mean,
Sarah?
it could be jumping through hoops, but I suspect it's working smarter and not harder.
Working smarter, yeah. I mean, it could be also about how men's brains are wired differently from women's brains.
Potentially.
But the metaphor is really, really important to think about. So if you're doing complex stuff, so in the corporate example that I like to use is Jeff Bezos at the start of Amazon, and one of his theories was that people work best to be creative, innovative in very small teams, 4 or 5. And he tried to get this message across and it didn't quite land. And then he came up with 2 pizza teams. If it takes more than 2 pizzas to feed your team, then you're too big to be properly creative.
Oh, I really like that one.
Get around the table and just get 2 pizzas out and come up with drones delivering your Amazon packages or same-day delivery or whatever it was. And then you'll be able to, he also had this 3-step process, which he called think how we do this in our company, think how people do this in their sector, and then think about the most peculiar way you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they come up with some of the big. So we love metaphors and we work hard on metaphors. Right, I'm going to move at pace now, Sarah. So our next one really is connecting with the audience. And I'm going to put some up here, Sarah, and maybe see, here we go. Just had a slight brain freeze there. There's my rose. So what about these are really simple tips of how we connect with the audience. Names and praise and shared interest and empathy, using a bit of humor, but being careful with jokes. Talking about the other lot. There's always another lot. The accountants and the lawyers, the people from Edinburgh, the people from Glasgow. Yeah. So there's always, you can make a connection in a respectful way about the other lot. Family is a great connector, and politicians overuse all that with family. Common beliefs, showing that we're a little bit vulnerable. Which ones do you like out of this? Do you use to knock that barrier down and to make that connection?
I mean, I watch this happen all the time, Athol, when I'm at stand-up gigs, and I don't know if anyone else out there attends stand-up. I go regularly, and I like seeing how they mix these, and it's so important to watch other people doing it, because I think it gives you a sense of how you can play around with this. So you don't necessarily need to do just one. You can tick 3 or 4 off in one swoop. You'll often see the compere at the very start of the event, honing in on someone and saying, what's your name? Where are you from? Who are you here with? And that gets you through the name, the other lot, potentially, if you find out where they're from. Is there a rival city? You get to talk about their family. You can go through them very quickly, and hopefully they'll have a little bit of humor in there as well. So just by doing that quick intro, they've got four, and it's definitely something that you can do yourself in presentations, even when you are there doing business rather than doing stand-up comedy set.
Yeah.
Mentioning your colleagues, they're from here, we had this experience, telling a little bit of a story with it. That's a really nice way of instantly connecting with your audience and ticking off, I say, 3 or 4.
So when I'm working with people who are creating their speeches or their presentations, the question I ask is, how are you going to make connection? And we quite often talk, again, from comedy, about winning the opening minute. How are you going to win the opening minute here? Because you win the opening minute, you get people with you. Okay. So we're getting there. That's connecting with the audience. So secret number 4. I'm going to drop this down. The big issue for a lot of people is, how do you structure your content? I have an old-fashioned bit of technology here called a flip chart, right, which I quite like. So quite often people that I've worked with quite a long time ago, I meet them in the railway station or I meet them in the airport, and they say, you're the man with the message pyramid. And I know that you, since we talked about this, you use this quite a lot.
This is how we connected, Athol. It certainly was. The message
Brought
pyramid.
together by the message pyramid. Okay, so this is the message pyramid, folks. And at the top of it, we have the point. In the middle of it, we have the evidence, which I often like to be in 3s, because remember how much we love 3s. And at the bottom of it, we have everything I know about this, right? And I mentioned, Zara, that I chair a few boards. We quite often get people who come to the boards who spend all their time. I might move this a little bit closer. Can you see that? Okay. Just need to get a new pen.
I can see it.
We get people who spend their lives down here, and everything I know about this. Scientists, so experts love to be in here. It's their safe place. So what we work with people when they're doing particularly keynote speeches to a wider audience is we say, what is your point? What is your evidence? And then repeat the point. Okay, and leave everything I know about this to the Q&A or to a handout or whatever.
I love this, and I honestly use it for so many things when I'm writing, especially newspaper columns. Today's my newspaper column writing day, and that I always come back to the message pyramid. What am I actually trying to say, and where's my evidence? So I've loved it. I've used it ever since we met.
So let's show everyone it in action. This is slightly dangerous. This is like I don't know what they say, working with children or animals or something like that. Sorry, Zara, I didn't mean the you either.
I wonder what you're insinuating there.
What about a subject? So you dream up a subject for today.
Okay, so I mean, one of the things I have been looking at recently is just how political this year is. Have you noticed? This is the most political year globally. So we've never actually had an election year quite like this all around the world. I think 64 different countries are holding elections, which I think is really important. I think there was an article in Time magazine about it being the election year. So that's certainly something that's sparking my interest right now.
So what would the point be about that if we were going to make that into a speech? It's
Perhaps
a crucial year for the world. Never
crucial
before have so many people.
politics and politicians have to change to adapt, perhaps. I feel that, you know, we certainly what we're seeing is that revolving door of politics globally, aren't we?
Okay.
Politicians.
And we'll
leading-
just do this really quickly. What would be some of your evidence for that? So I like 64 countries because I like some stats in here.
Oh yeah, so 64 countries are going to be hosting elections this year. And you know, it's also, I think it's been described as the ultimate election year, which I did quite like, and that was by Times magazine. Remember?
Okay.
Ultimate.
And just because I've got my eye on the clock, I won't go too much of the detail, but just to show people how it works. Give me a third thing.
We have never had a year like this, so it's the very first time that there has been so much importance globally in politics.
Yep. How about the world's at a bit of a crossroads, isn't it? With all the technological change and yeah.
Absolutely, instability.
Okay.
Uncertainty.
So if I was going to do this, and this is really, really quick, if I was going to do this as a speech, I would start off by saying, we believe that our politicians have to change. And there's never been a year quite like this for our politicians, because we've got elections in 64 countries. It's the ultimate election year. And it comes at a time that the world is at a crossroads on so many different areas. So our challenge to the politicians of the world is that they have to change. They have to work together to meet the global issues that face us all and to be much more relevant to the lives of the people who they want to vote for them, right? So that's just a wee, I don't know, I just kind of waffled a bit there. But so then what I would do is I would take some of my evidence. I would take more time to consider what my 3 bits of evidence are. And I would create a message pyramid on point 1, a message pyramid on point 2, message pyramid on point 3. I would do a conclusion and I would have an 8-minute tight, sharp speech.
I mean, you make it look so easy.
I don't. Let me switch my camera back because I'm going to go at great pace now. So what else do we? So we've got to number 4, the message pyramid, how you structure it. I would also say that with the message pyramid, if you then were to put a metaphor or a compelling customer story or a compelling client story on at the bottom of the message pyramid, it's more likely to be remembered. It's a whole different workshop on slides, but we're killing communication. We're killing corporate communication with the slides that we use. This was voted the world's worst PowerPoint slide back in 2014, 2015. The problem is if you put up this kind of visual and you're talking, then people try and work out the visual and they stop listening to you. When I worked in television news, we talked about the pictures and the words doing a dance, right? And if the pictures went off in one direction and the words went off in another direction, the television viewers stopped listening. They glazed over. They started thinking about their dinner or about how they were going to get home from work. The same with these slides. This is the second worst slide. I was actually presenting to that big pharma, and when I got to this point, I just had this fear about two slides back that it maybe had their logo on it, but fortunately it didn't. So it's a whole different conversation. But if we're going to use visuals, then we need to use visuals that add to your storytelling and don't detract from it. Big issue. And we've got ourselves into a big mess, I think, particularly in the finance sector, probably in the banking sector, where we're getting slides prepared for us, which are almost like the board pack. And then we talk to them, right? And we put up all that information has to be in its complex. It's a nightmare. Interested in views on that, if you put them in the chat or in the Q&A. So we come to inner confidence with a few minutes to go, and I'm going to open the jar. And I'm going to reveal, Zara,
Just have a drum roll.
what's in the jar.
Well,
Actually, not too sure where that camera is.
there's just air in it.
There's air. There's air. Because where I start a lot, and interesting to hear what you do about this in practice, is I start with people's breathing to reduce the anxiety. I do a thing called whiskey breath, 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out, hold for 4, and I can bring your heart rate down very quickly. I did something recently with a chief exec where he had one of these fancy watches, and we recorded his heart rate as he went up on the stage at an awards ceremony, right? And his heart rate almost hit 200.
Wow.
So I'm like, this is quite dangerous. The anxiety that you've got, you're up there in front of an audience of 400 or 500 people, had to speak for a few minutes, give the award. So I want to bring people's heart rates down before they start their presentation and at every opportunity during their presentation.
It's like a workout, really, isn't it? 200 beats a minute. That breath is so important. And the method that you just mentioned, I use every time I'm going on stage. You know, anytime I'm going into a situation and I start to feel my heart rate rise, and people will feel this in so many ways. Some people break out in hives, other people get very sweaty palms. Some people get dizzy. And what happens when you're feeling that way is you often forget, you'll get stage fright. Your body is quite literally going into fight or flight. So
your legs starts to shake, you go dry in the throat. So the other things that I work with here, we talk about silencing the inner voices, which is another acting thing. So in silencing the inner voice, we have two voices in our head, our inner critic and our inner coach. And our inner critic is saying, Athol, you're making a right mess of this. The bankers will think that you're a complete idiot, right? And the inner coach is saying, well, you need to crack on. You need to get through this. The moment we start that conversation in our head, we're not present. That's when we get the ums and the ahs. That's when we get brain freeze. So I say to myself, I have a little voice which says, not now. I'm just not going to have that conversation now. And I'm going to be literally present. Last one is accept it never goes as planned. It's always going to go differently. So very, very quickly on commanding your space, we've kind of covered commanding your space a bit. We want you to be expressive. We want you to use your body language. This is Zaza Gabor, famous Hungarian actress who died only a few days short of her 100th birthday. Left Hungary after the Second World War, went to Hollywood, became famous. She had 9 husbands, Sarah.
Wow, busy women.
And she said that she was the best housekeeper in Hollywood. Every time she left a man, she kept his house. I just pop her up there because you do have to think, and again, when we're working with people, we talk about arriving in your space. Yeah. As you move on to the stage, the performance starts when you're moving. When you get up, the performance starts when you move into the boardroom. Arriving in your space, waiting for the attention to be on you, and departing your space. And Aristotle, right? So we'd like to think this is all new from the edge, but Aristotle had the art of rhetoric back hundreds of years ago, and he talked about logos, which is the data, the evidence, the comfortable place for us in corporate life, ethos, your reputation, and pathos from your heart. And we work a lot with people. They're very good at logos, they're pretty good at ethos, but we say you've got to, if you want people to deal with all the changes that we're dealing with now, we want you to inspire people. We have to get more pathos into what it is that you're doing. So I've got an eye on the clock, and I want to just play one final video. And it is Simon Sinek. So Simon Sinek is the guy who came up with It Starts With Why, on purpose. And in this clip, he talks about the infinite life. So watch all the 7 secrets and see how Simon is doing the 7 secrets.
Mean to live an infinite life. Clearly, our lives are finite. We're born, we die, we come, we go. But life is infinite. The game of life will continue with us or without us. Which means every single one of us has a choice. We don't get to choose the nature of the game. Life is infinite. We don't even get to choose if we want to play in the game or not. Once you're born, you're in it. We get one choice. Do you want to play with a finite mindset, or do you want to play with an infinite mindset? To play with a finite mindset means waking up every day and saying, I'm going to be the best, I'm going to be better than everybody else, I'm going to accumulate more power, more responsibility, more money, whatever it is, whatever your metric is, I'm going to get more than anybody else. Me. And when you die, you take none of it with you. Or we can choose to live our lives with an infinite mindset, which means I'm going to leave this world, this school, in better shape than I found it. It means I'm going to devote my life to see that those around me rise. And we know that we're living with an infinite mindset because our obsession is seeing that we have an impact on the lives of the people around us. We've all had teachers, and some of you are those teachers, where 20 or 30 years from now, I can go to one of your students and say, you're a remarkable human being, you've accomplished so much in your life. How did you become the person you are today? And they will tell me your name. We all remember the teacher who believed in us. We all remember the teacher who had our backs. We all remember the teacher who saw something in us that nobody else saw. We've forgotten all the others, but we remember those couple. And that's what it means to live with an infinite mindset. It means we devote ourselves to that mindset for everyone in our lives. That other teachers will say that about us. Other principals will say that about us. Other students will say that about us. Our friends will say that about us. I am who I am today because of you, and I will commit to live the same life that you taught me how to live. And you will literally live on beyond your own lifestyle, your own lifetime. That when you're gone, others will carry your work for you. This is what it means to live an infinite life, and it is just a choice. Mean to live an infinite life.
It's just a choice. Simon Sinek dialing up his pathos. You like him, Sarah?
There's just the passion from him there. I mean, I'm questioning my whole life choices again now, Athol. What am I doing in my life? Am I leading an infinite life? He's a very inspiring speaker. And I think, often I read quotes from him because the content is as good as his delivery. He does distill his thoughts. He thinks very clearly and simplifies the messages that he's trying to give. But I think he's a fantastic example.
Yeah. Beautiful pace, great pausing, very interesting how he speeds up to get the energy into his argument. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 7 secrets of inspiring presentation. Communication takes place in the silence. Make it a conversation. Connect with your audience. Get to the point. Command your space. Build your inner confidence. And be memorable. So we would like you to summon up your inner Michelle Obama, to command your space like Zaza Gabor at your next team meeting, and to get the pathos that Aristotle talked about, to speak from the heart so that you can inspire people. And those are the 7 secrets. If there's anything that we can do to help you, we would be delighted to do that. But as the clock strikes the hour, thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much for all of you for attending the webinar and listening to our take on inspiring presentation. Thank you.